Salam, peace be upon you. My name is Muhammad Laik Siddiqui, the father of Holophase. Let us pause and look back what we have woven in this first 20 parts of episode 16. Our journey began with one radical idea: pattern comes first. From there, we discovered that the deepest root of pattern is comparability itself, that public knowledge must be relational, that every claim must be disciplined, and that reality becomes readable through lawful structure rather than assumption. There is a simple way to begin this whole journey. Before we ask what a thing is, before we ask what matter is, before we ask what time is, before we ask what space is, we must ask a more basic question. What must already be true for anything to be knowable at all? That is the question that opened our path. Most people begin with objects. They say, here is a tree, here is a stone, here is a star, here is a person. Then they try to build knowledge on top of these things. But our journey began differently. We did not begin with things. We began with the deeper condition that makes anything appear as a thing in the first place. We began with pattern. That was the first great inversion of the entire journey. Pattern comes first. The core essence of part 1 was this: pattern is not decoration added to reality after reality is already there. Pattern is the very way reality becomes publicly recognizable at all. A chair is not first a mysterious hidden substance and then secondarily a pattern. What makes it a chair for us is already structure, relation, repeatability, shape, difference, stability. The same is true of a face, a melody, a tree, a river, a language, a galaxy. What becomes real for public knowledge does so through pattern. This means pattern is not the secondary luxury. It is the first condition of public intelligibility. Part 1 was the moment we stopped treating pattern like wallpaper and started treating it like foundation. Part 2, the primitive root, phi. Once pattern was placed first, we had to ask, what is the most primitive seed beneath all pattern? The answer was not matter, energy, space, time, mind, or law. The answer was something more humble and more radical: the possibility of distinction itself. We gave that primitive root a name, phi. Phi is not a thing. It is not an object floating somewhere. It is not a substance. It is not energy. It is not mind. It is the bare permission for saying this is not that. It is primitive comparability. It is the root condition that allows difference to appear at all. If part 1 said pattern comes first, then part 2 said the soil from which pattern grows is phi, the possibility of distinction. Without phi, nothing can differ. Without difference, nothing can be identified. Without identification, nothing can be shared. Without sharing, there is no public knowledge. That is how deep phi goes. Part 3. Why phi is circular. Once phi was introduced, the next question was, what kind of structure does primitive comparability have? It might seem at first that it should be linear, like a straight line with a beginning and an end. But that would secretly import an absolute zero, a privileged origin, an invisible authority point from which everything is measured. Our journey refused that smuggling. Instead, we discovered that the deepest form of primitive comparability must be circular. Why? Because in a circle, no point is privileged. You can start anywhere. What matters is not absolute position, but relation. A circle gives you return, closure, repetition, winding, and memory without requiring a hidden absolute beginning. This was the essence of part 3. Phi is not line-shaped, it is circle-shaped. That single move changed everything, because once primitive comparability became circular, the door opened to winding, loops, residues, and the deep possibility that discrete structure can emerge from continuity itself. Part 4. Only relations are public. If phi is circular, then a profound consequence follows. On a circle, absolute labels are not public truth. If I call one point zero and you call another point zero, the structure has not changed. Only our labels have changed. That means public knowledge cannot depend on absolute phi values. What is public are only relations, especially differences. This was the core of Part 4. The public phase of a phi pattern is not absolute placement, but relational invariance. In the simplest language possible, what matters is not where something absolutely is in phi, but how it differs from something else, and what remains stable when representation shifts. Part 4 was the birth of the great discipline of relational publicness. Part 4.5, the anti-smuggling principle. The moment we said only relations are public, a danger immediately appeared. If public knowledge depends on relations, then hidden choices can fake those relations. A person can hide pre-processing, hide boundaries, hide assumptions, hide scales, hide transformations, and then present the result as if the pattern just appeared. But it did not. It was smuggled in. Part 4.5, therefore, installed one of the central moral and logical protections of the entire framework: anti-smuggling. Its essence was simple. Any assumption that materially changes the pattern outcome must be declared. This means science must not only show results, it must show the assumptions, transformations, and boundaries that shaped those results. This part taught us that hidden assumptions corrupt pattern knowledge, whether intentional or not. Honesty is not optional, it is structural. Part 4.6. Every claim must declare its type. After anti-smuggling came another problem. Not all claims are the same. Saying a pattern exists here is not the same kind of claim as saying this is the same pattern as that, or this pattern persists, or this causes that, or this means something. If we mix this up, confusion enters immediately. We test one kind of claim with the tools meant for another. So part 4.6 introduced type discipline. Every public claim must declare what kind of claim it is: existence, identity, persistence, prediction, intervention, emergence, interpretation, or null. This was not administrative fussiness, it was clarity. It meant each claim must face the right test, the right falsifier, and the right uncertainty standard. The essence of this part was, before judging a claim, know what kind of claim it is. Part 5, the fourfold identity. By this point, another hidden confusion had to be removed. People often collapse four different things into one: the pattern itself, the claim about the pattern, the certificate or verdict about the claim, and the artifacts that support the claim. These are not the same. The pattern is the structure itself. The claim is what someone says about it. The certificate is the outcome of evaluation. The artifacts are the evidence, logs, procedures, files, and records. Part 5 separated these four clearly. This mattered because without this separation, we confuse changes in paperwork for changes in reality, or changes in evidence for changes in the pattern itself. The core essence here was public science must distinguish what is real, what is asserted, what is certified, and what supports certification. Part 6. Windows and finite access. Next came a deep humility. No claim comes from nowhere. No observer sees everything. Every observation comes through a window. A window means finite access, a certain region, duration, resolution, sensitivity, and condition of observation. You never see the whole mountain. You see one side in one light at one moment with one instrument from one distance. That is not a weakness. It is the structure of honest knowledge. Part 6 taught us that every public claim is windowed and finite. The honest scientist does not pretend to have infinite access. They declare the window. So the core essence was this: knowledge is always situated, and that situatedness must be named. Part 7. Difference is the first readable phase. Once we had windows, we could ask, what is the first thing that becomes readable inside a window? Not absolute phi, not the total pattern all at once. The first readable content is difference. Difference is the first public phase of pattern because what can first be noticed is contrast, variation, change across comparison. Before one knows what something is, one first encounters that it differs. Part 7 taught us that lawful contrast is the beginning of legibility. This sounds simple, but it is profound. It means pattern reading begins not with essence, but with relational distinction. Part 8. Lifts, branch cuts, and the first carrier. By now, we faced a technical but beautiful problem. If phi is circular, how do we read local change smoothly? A circle cannot be linearly differentiated everywhere in a straightforward way because circular values wrap around. The answer was lifts. A lift is a local unwrapping of the circular value into a linear representation in a neighborhood. This lets us read local change, as long as we remain honest that the lift is a tool, not the pattern itself. From the lift came the first local carrier of change. A equals d phi tilde, spoken in words as A equals the differential of the lifted phi. Part 8 taught us that to read local change lawfully, we need local unwrapping, declared seams, and honesty about representation. Its core essence was local change becomes readable through lawful tools, but the tool must never be mistaken for the reality. Part 9. Jets and finite readability. Once local change became readable, the next insight was that local structure comes in layers. A pattern near a point is not just its value there. It has rate of change, curvature, change of curvature, and further layers beyond. These stacked layers are called jets. A jet is like a local fingerprint of behavior, but this part also reminded us of humility. We never read infinitely deep. Every window supports only finite depth. We can certify local structure only up to some readable ceiling. So the essence of part 9 was this: patterns have layered local depth, but public knowledge reads only finite slices of that depth. There is always more beneath current reach. Part 10. Time, space, and motion as readouts. Then came one of the deepest inversions of the whole journey. Ordinary thought treats time, space, and motion as primitive containers. Reality is imagined to happen in time and in space. But this framework reversed that view. From one differentiated pattern, three coordinated readouts appear: cadence, which becomes time-like; texture, which becomes space-like; flow, which becomes motion-like. Time, space, and motion are therefore not primitive ingredients of reality at this level. They are readouts from one underlying pattern. This was the heart of part 10. What we usually treat as the stage may actually be three phases of the performance. Part 11. Domains, excision, and aliasing. At this point, the framework became even more honest. Not every operation is lawful everywhere in a window. A window says where we look. A domain says where a particular operation is valid. Some regions must be excised because the language there becomes unstable, undefined, or counterfeit. And sometimes insufficient sampling creates aliasing, fake patterns that appear only because access failed. Part 11 taught disciplined silence. Its core essence was where pattern language is not lawful, the honest scientist does not speak as if it were. Silence at the edge of legibility is not weakness, it is rigor. Part 12. Boundaries are part of the pattern. Next came a lesson many sciences ignore. Boundaries are not external annoyances, they shape the pattern itself. A vibrating string with fixed ends is not the same as one with periodic closure. A system with absorbing edges is not the same as one with reflecting edges. The edges are part of the structure. So, part 12 taught us boundary honesty. A claim without declared boundaries is incomplete because hidden boundaries fabricate false invariants, false symmetries, false persistence, and false emergence. The essence here was simple and deep. A pattern is partly made by its edges. Part 13. Atlas, Overlap, and Stitching. Once windows, domains, and boundaries were in place, we faced the question of the whole. No single window sees everything. So how can a global pattern exist at all? The answer was the Atlas principle. A global pattern exists through lawful stitching of local descriptions across overlaps. Many local charts, one global pattern, provided the transitions between charts are lawful and compatible. This part showed that the whole is not assumed first. It is built from patchwise public structure. Its core essence was global reality is stitched, not magically given. Part 14. Topology, Winding, Holonomy, and Global Memory. Even after stitching, another truth emerged. Local smoothness does not exhaust reality. Closed loops can carry global memory. In circular valued patterns, going around a loop can produce total change equal to whole multiples of a full turn. This gives winding number. More generally, loops carry holonomy, a residue of the journey. Part 14 revealed one of the most beautiful insights of the entire framework. Discreteness can emerge from continuity through closure. You do not need to impose integers from outside. A continuous circular structure, when forced to close, can naturally produce whole counts. Its core essence was patterns remember globally, not only locally. Part 15. Defects as irreducible pattern structure. Once topology was installed, defects could finally be understood properly. A defect is not a foreign object inserted into a pattern. It is an irreducible obstruction in global structure. It is where smooth lifting or stitching fails, and that failure itself is part of the pattern. Defects carry quantized charge, can persist, can link, and may even underlie what later appears as particle-like behavior. Part 15 therefore transformed defect from insult into ontology. Its core essence was defects are not errors. They are stable topological features of the pattern itself. Part 16. First full synthesis before identity. At this point, before moving deeper, we had to pause and gather everything. Part 16 did not introduce new ontology. It locked what had already been built. A phi pattern is rooted in comparability. Circular, relational, windowed, locally layered, globally stitched, topologically rich, and defect-bearing. This part mattered because without synthesis, drift begins. Vocabulary loosens, earlier meaning gets blurred. Its essence was Before asking deeper questions, we must know exactly what we have already established. Part 17. When two descriptions are the same pattern. Now came the central question of pattern science. When are two descriptions the same phi pattern? The answer was not visual resemblance. Things can look alike and be different, or look different and be the same. Two descriptions are the same pattern if and only if they are related by declared lawful equivalence and preserve the relevant invariants within declared scope. This was the foundation of pattern identity. Its core essence was sameness is not appearance. Sameness is invariant equivalence under lawful transformation. Canonicalization. Once identity was defined, another practical problem arose. In public science, we need stable ways of comparing descriptions across teams, tools, and observers. That is where canonicalization entered. Canonicalization means producing standard comparison-ready forms. It may involve normalization, alignment, format conversion, denoising, or registration. But canonicalization does not create identity. It only helps comparison. This distinction was crucial. The pattern remains what it is regardless of its canonical form. Canonicalization is procedure, not truth source. Its core essence was comparison tools must be declared and must never be mistaken for the source of reality. Invariant bases and minimal generators. Then we turn from identity to understanding. To know a pattern deeply is not merely to describe all its visible details. It is to identify the smaller invariant generating core from which much of its visible structure follows. This is structural compression. A pattern often has redundancy in its description. Its true depth lies in finding what is primitive, what is derived, what is independent, and what generates the rest. So part 19 taught us that deep understanding means knowing the compressed core, the invariant basis or minimal generator. Its essence was real understanding is generative understanding. Part 20, persistence and stability. Finally, after identity and core structure, we asked one of the most human questions of all. How does a pattern remain itself? Persistence was defined not as default thingness, but as identity survival under lawful variation within declared limits. A pattern persists when its invariant identity survives perturbation, representation change, window shift, and lawful transformation under declared scope, tolerances, and uncertainty. This part taught that stability is not automatic, it must be certified. A melody persists across instruments. A tree persists across seasons. A person persists across years, but always according to declared invariance, declared tolerances, and honest uncertainty. The core essence of part 20 was persistence is not assumed continuity, it is certified continuity. The deep core essence of the whole journey. Now, after parts 1 through 20, what have we really built? We have built a way of seeing reality that begins neither with objects, nor with substances, nor with unquestioned containers like time and space. We began instead with the most humble and universal condition of public knowability, the possibility of distinction. From that primitive root, phi, we discovered a circular relational foundation. From circularity, we learn that only relations are public. From publicness, we learn the need for anti-smuggling, type discipline, fourfold identity, and declared windows. From windows, difference became the first readable face. From difference, local change became readable through lifts and carriers. From there, layered local signatures emerged, and then the triunity of time-like, space-like, and motion-like readouts. From finite access came domains, excisions, aliasing, and boundaries. From patchwise access came atlas stitching. From stitching came topology, winding, holonomy, and global memory. From irreducible topological abstraction came defects. From there came synthesis, identity, canonicalization, compression, and persistence. If I had to say the whole journey in one simple sentence, it would be this. Reality becomes publicly knowable not by starting with things, but by starting with lawful pattern. And if I had to say the heart of lawful pattern in one sentence, it would be this. A phi pattern is the invariant structure of comparability that becomes readable through differences, local signatures, global stitching, topology, and persistence under disciplined public conditions. That is the deep essence of our journey. Not that the world is made of little objects first and relations second, but that the world becomes intelligible through structured comparability, and everything else, object, law, memory, defect, continuity, and later even time, space, and motion, emerges as disciplined readouts or stabilizations of that deeper pattern order. This is why the journey feels so radical. It does not merely add a new theory to the shelf. It tries to rebuild the shelf itself. It says, do not start from assumptions you have not earned. Do not smuggle in hidden absolutes. Do not confuse appearance with invariance. Do not confuse local view with global truth. Do not confuse canonical form with reality. Do not confuse continuity with persistence. Do not call noise structure. Do not call undeclared boundaries truth. Do not speak where the language is unlawful. And above all, do not forget that public knowledge is a discipline, not a guess. That is the spirit of parts 1 to 20. And from here, the next question becomes unavoidable. If we now know what a phi pattern is, how it is compared, how it is compressed, and how it persists, then how do patterns interact, compose, transform, emerge, and eventually become the richly expressed world we live in? That is where the next movement begins. Always, peace be upon you.